Welcome to the TelePT Connections podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Seidler. Adrian couldn't join us today. Also, I know I teased Mark Milligan for this episode, but I jumped the gun last week. Sorry about that. Mark will be on next week. This week's guest is a great one too, so don't go anywhere. Chris Gellert is the CEO of Pinnacle Training and Consulting Systems. Chris has 20 years of diverse, strong clinical experience as a PT, a personal trainer, and a certified professional coach. He holds an advanced master's degree in orthopedics and sports physical therapy, a master's degree in PT, and a BS in marketing. He is an experienced international presenter, writer, and consultant. And here's the big stuff. Chris has created 17 home study courses on human movement and 3 live seminars for personal trainers and physical therapy assistants. He developed the Advanced Certificate in Post Rehab Program and Continuing Education System, which is composed of 10 home study courses, a live seminar, over 50 plus videos, articles, webinars, and a mentoring system. Chris's latest course is called Creating Your Side Hustle, What PTs Didn't Learn in School. We talk about side hustles, avoiding burnout, and of course, the future of the PT profession. Please remember to leave your comments and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. We're everywhere now. So leave your comments wherever you subscribe. They mean so much to me, and they let other folks know to listen to the podcast. I hope you enjoy this episode with my guest, Chris Gellert.
Welcome to the TelePT Connection podcast. Physical therapy information, innovation, and insights for patients and providers. Physical therapists and innovators Dan Seidler and Adrian Miranda will help you connect with your neuromusculoskeletal system, discussing how to care for every physical ailment they've ever seen or heard of, the latest digital health technology, and other fun stuff from their PT toolbox. Great guests, 21st century home remedies, exercise thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, here are your hosts, Dan and Adrian.
And we are on the air. Welcome to the TelePT TelePT Connections podcast. My name is Dan, and this is I have my special guest here today, Chris Gellert. Chris is with Pinnacle Training Consulting Systems. That's his company, and great to have you, Chris.
Dan, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about. You and I, we had a phone call a few weeks ago, and on the call, after the call, I was like, we really should have recorded this phone call because it was so interesting. Like, I was so intrigued by the things that you're working on. And we can get right into it. Tell us about Pinnacle Training Consulting.
Yeah, it's a continuing education consulting company. So primarily it's targeted towards personal trainers. That's our target market, but it's also for physical therapists. And prior to becoming a physio, I saw a problem in the industry of personal training where, there's so many personal trainers doing a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't be doing. He said, why don't we educate them? And I said, I'm going to create some courses, and end up being now 17 after 10 years. And the back end is just like PT school, Dan. A lot of work, a lot of hard sweat and tears. When it's nice outside, I was actually writing and editing. And like I said, the goal has been to educate. It's not the Gellert method. It's science. It's science that we studied in school. And we feel like we're making a difference. And now we'll come up with a new course called PTs Side Hustle. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's all continuing education and a little bit of consulting work, which is a nice thing to have once in a while once you're not doing physical therapy anymore.
Yeah. You said we a couple of times. Do you have partners? Do you do everything on your own?
I have a couple. No, I don't have any partners. I have a couple of instructors that I work with, but primarily it's me. It's solely me. I keep saying we with pen test, but I have a couple people I work with that help out once in a while, but it's primarily me. Yeah.
Okay, so you were a personal trainer and you saw wonky stuff going on, and you wanted to clean that up a little bit.
Exactly.
So most of your students are most of them personal trainers at this stage? Are most of them personal trainers or PTs?
I'm going to say most of them are PTs. They've been purchasing more of my ISTM course, which is instrument-assisted soft tissue manipulation.
Yep.
But the first round of courses, the first 10 that we did, were all, anatomy, they were science, they were integrative training, exercise, teaching the foundation principles that we got in PT school. So I'd say that the paradigm has shifted. It's really towards physical therapist. And now, again, like this new course I've created, it's about what you and I are doing is stepping outside that box. How can we if we've already avoided burnout, or if we already have burnout, excuse me, not avoid burnout, how can we avoid it? But those like myself, maybe and others in your customer base and your listener base right now, who are burned out or experiencing burnout, what can we do to capitalize on burnout and to make a transition? And that's where we're at.
I hear it. I hear it all the time. PT working in certain types of practices can be grueling, day after day, treating tons of patients, documenting all day. It definitely can take its toll on someone who's, and Adrian has said to me a couple of times that the average lifespan of a PT as a PT is about 5 years. And that was just amazing to me when I first heard it. I couldn't believe it, but it makes sense. I mean, I know so many PTs who have dropped out of the profession because of I guess it's stress. I mean, it's a high pace. It's typically a high paced profession. But what you're trying to help people do is to thin out that, like to diversify a little bit, right? So don't be a 40 to 60 an hour a week PT. You can still work that 40 hours, but do other things.
Exactly. And you can have a side hustle, you can have a side gig, whatever you want to call it, but it can actually be something that I wish I started, Dan, years ago. And I wish I started when I started in school, but you don't get taught that in school. I have a business background, luckily, but my brain in terms of the ideas just started probably about 10 years ago, whereas I've been practicing for almost 20. So if I was dropped down these ideas 20 years ago and said, hey, think about creating a home study course, or think about doing seminars, or think about doing webinars, or thinking about writing a book or writing an e-course or starting this kind of virtual, I would have been with no way. And it's opened up your eyes. And as there's just a whole other world.
Did the idea come to you when you were a personal trainer or a PT?
A PT. Yeah.
What made you where did it come from?
It's a great question, Dan. I think the main idea is I worked in a lot of health clubs on the West Coast to the Midwest and East Coast. And I think the most educated, competent, and super duper trained are on the West Coast. They're very, very bright, masters and such, and even below masters. The East Coast, I just have not the knowledge and that mindset. And doing things like assessing joint play or assessing muscle testing or doing a gait assessment in the gym are things that they shouldn't be doing. And I'm not here to police that, but it just irritated me. And it was one day I said, I'm not going to say F you because I'm not going to be the bad guy. But what can I do to give back without being that bad guy? And that's to educate. That's to create a paradigm shift and say, listen, maybe I can make them think what they're doing a little bit differently. And that's what I did.
Great perspective, man. Great attitude about it. You weren't going to wrap them out or tell on them, but you brought them a solution. I love it. That's really cool, man.
Solution. It's like Tell PT Solutions. Exactly.
Hey, I'm all about solutions, right? So you're looking to, at least initially, you were looking to educate personal trainers and basically taking your base of knowledge as a PT and educate personal trainers with that to what end, really? I mean, meaning you're not trying to help them be PTs. Mm-hmm. So what's really going to happen for them?
That's a great question. I think the end goal would be to think differently, to use their noggin and not to be acting like a PT, and to be a personal trainer, fitness professional, movement individual that can help in a company and really work with us. And so, as I call it, the Rehab Triangle, you've got the PT, you have the physician, really you've got the doctor and the patient, and then you've got the trainer. So you've almost got a quad versus a triangle. Mm-hmm. And I just found that Rehab Triangle is so dysfunctional that if we don't communicate and do a better job at saying, listen, not just stay in your lane, but how can I help you in your lane? Then the end user, which is the client, the patient's going to suffer. Yeah. So I think it's really, that was my goal, not to police it, but how can I make a difference to get them to act and think differently and be challenged, because their educational backgrounds are extremely different compared to ours, as you know. I mean, it's a joke.
So think differently. And I don't necessarily believe this, what I'm going to say, but there are definitely PTs out there who feel that personal trainers and athletic trainers are moving in on our territory, right? So isn't there the risk by educating them on the things we learn in school and get an actual license in and pass a national exam for, isn't there the risk that they may take that knowledge and say, I'm basically a PT. I mean, I took Chris's course.
That's a great point. And out to my answer to that.
And I don't really think that's going to happen, but yeah,
I understand.
What's preventing that from happening?
Great point. I think that's a great point. When I spoke at conferences, or when I speak at conferences like IDEA and IRSA and SCW and all these major national fitness, not physical therapy, but personal training conferences, you never see a physical therapist teaching someone how to do joint play or a gait assessment or that. But when I spoke at IDEA one year, I did see a physical therapist talk about how to basically almost do pavlovs and pivums. And I was like, whoa, you can't do that. You can't in clinical information and teach them gait and Berg and these things that we know. So I think where my courses stand out, Dan, and in the courses and should be on the website, which I'm going to be putting more because you just said this, is that we're not teaching clinical hands-on assessment. We're teaching the science behind the movement.
Yeah.
And the science behind the movement is the actual foundation, yes, that you and I learned, but a lot of personal trainers didn't learn kinesiology, didn't take biomechanics, didn't learn Therex, haven't learned joint actions in the kinetic chain. So they're getting a snidbit maybe, and they're focusing on these certs, maybe kettlebell cert. Well, to become it and get certified, you still have to understand the theory behind it and the biomechanics behind it. You can't just wing it, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. Very carefully.
That's great. So I'm going to take this in the other direction now.
Sure.
A lot of, I would back this up. A lot of people I speak with think that there's a ton of PTs out there who are underdosing, who are not well enough versed in strength and conditioning. And they're actually cheating their patients by not giving them the correct dosage or progression of exercise. What do you say to that? And do any of your classes address that? Because I think a lot of personal trainers, athletic trainers, are actually better at it than a lot of PTs.
I think it's a great point. You mentioned earlier in the intro, or in our field, I've worked in a company where I was seeing 19 to 20 to 21 a day. Now, that might be a lot. I have a colleague right now, I know a physio down in Jersey who's seeing 30 to 34 a day with an aide. That's just, I don't know how the quality of care is there, right? 30 to 34 patients.
How is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the first part and second part is, I think you're right regarding dosage. If someone doesn't understand strength conditioning, they need to get their CSCS. They need to go and get more training than really they have from their base level master's or doctorate. And number third, I think you are right. I think there are some personal trainers and fitness professionals that really can do walk-arounds among some physios, and they're very smart. I have some in my head, but it'll come to mind in a minute. Just give me a second. But I know they're out there, but I've seen them. Like Juan Carlos Santana, an oldie, but a goodie. He's back in the 80s and 90s as an example, back down in Florida. I think he's with IHP, Institute of Health Performance, or IHP. So you're right. I think, it depends on where you're at. It depends on the format. It depends on your setting. And, Dan, having worked in private practice, I mean, my career has been through inpatient, outpatient, private practice, industrial health, and home health. I mean, hospital. Home health is the only thing I haven't done. Your job is to get them in and out as quick as possible. But the only place where I think I've really had the ability to play and integrate, really play well, is the private practice outpatient setting, but still be limited on visits. So the visits dictate how much you can do. Oh, yeah. And you got to decide that as soon as you meet them from the get-go, right? So there's a lot of variables to deal with that, I think. Angie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, I tended to be a little bit more aggressive than I may have liked with some patients. I mean, I can't say it backfired often, very infrequently, but where you kind of feel that pressure to like you said, progress them out of PT, or you only have limited time, so you got to get a lot of shit done, basically. Exactly. And I always looked at that as an opportunity to push a patient a little bit more. You have to really read the patient, obviously, but for me, it was super important to progress them, to add resistance, to add volume, and I saw other people doing straight leg raises incessantly, when their patients really needed to be doing resisted or weighted squats or more functional activity.
Or even following a cookie cutter approach is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So you developed these, well, you had this idea of doing these programs, right? How'd you get to the point where you're producing and marketing your own content? Like, is that a big step for you?
It's a huge step. I mean, writing is one thing, and writing one course is one thing, but writing 17 over how many years is another. But the ability to take that, and then how do you get that course approved through both like our states and board levels, but also now in the fitness world, how do you get approved by these national chains is much, much easier, much different than with our PT boards, because the PT boards and the FSPPT, which is no longer, they have more stringent demands, right? Higher level objectives. You have to rate, things that are obviously, is this going to be tangible for the end user? So the personal training courses, not that I'm trying to say I was lighter on them, but my physical therapy courses, have been so much more work because, again, higher level objectives, higher end goals, the requirements are higher. So I had to learn how to do that, just like what you're doing now, being a podcast host, which I've never done. So I thank you again for this invitation. Never done that. Second part is, marketing it, and marketing right now. Marketing is a game of you're marketing all the time to your user. So marketing it out there on social media, getting on through other sites, vendor relations, and what I call piggyback marketing are things that I had to really deep down into, but it's worked out well. And now I have relationships in the US and South Africa and across the world, around the world, not across the world. And it's taken a lot of time. And as you know, Dan, with relationships, it's huge. So it's been a big process, which I think has worked really well.
That's great. I want to go back to the technology and the production stuff, but you mentioned marketing. So Can you elaborate on the marketing and your relationships and how you started and what kind of relationship you have and what your reach is now?
Yeah. The relationships I have, or the marketing, I should say first, is been through, which I've never been, and I'm a neophyte when it comes to social media, Dan, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, I have a BS in marketing. I never learned that in business school. We never had that. That wasn't even discussed in school, right? So. No, not at all. So I had
not such a thing.
No, it was like a crash course on social media for dummies, and I had to literally learn how to do that. And luckily, I'm married to a tech whiz. I'm married to a wonderful graphic designer. She's a digital marketer. She's helped me a little bit, but I can't say to my wife, "Hey, honey, I need help with this every day." That's just not realistic. So a lot of soul searching, a lot of researching, a lot of reading, and a lot of reviewing. And in terms of making relationships, I knew that from the get-go, making relationships and developing them would help me both in the US, but in Canada, South Africa, India, that Australia. I'm talking to some people now in Dubai that when you make relationships, it's a matter of where is the masses and where can you fill that void better than anybody else. So the goal I've been trying to do is penetrate. It's almost like a little sperm penetrating and cultivating an egg, but it's very, very difficult when you're not a big box gym or a big box fitness company like, say, NASM, which is an amazing company, or ACE, and you're just Chris Gellert or Pinnacle Training Consulting Systems. But how you persist and how you have a plan is vital to the cultivation of those relationships and getting it out. And I think the message, and I'm growing, it's been 15 years. It's growing slowly like nurturing a plant, and it's taking time. So
I think a lot of my listeners are similar, meaning small size and
small size.
And whether I think small businesses often use the excuse that they can't compete with the big guy. You said something contrary to that.
Yeah, I actually feel you can take them on, but here's how you take them on, Dan. You take them on, and as a business owner, you've got to create a niche and a uniqueness to who and what you are. And if you don't understand this, it's just called a SWOT analysis, or strength, weakness, opportunity, threats of your business and of your surroundings, you're going to fail. But if you create a niche and there's a need and you can fulfill that void better than anybody else, and you've done your analysis of strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats, you have to have a tangible marketing plan and business plan then to follow through. And I feel, I feel that with this approach, and this is while working as a physio that I started this company. This wasn't like, I started it yesterday. This was 15 years ago. I started this company part-time, that you can do it. Anyone can do it. I changed careers at 25, went back to school. That's a whole other story, but you can do it. It's a matter of getting a plan, implementing it piece by piece, systematically and logically going to there.
Yeah. Definitely. And, you on the surface, at least like your image, your company's image, it doesn't appear that you're a little guy, working out of his basement or home office. You have great production value in your website, your courses. Everything appears to be super professional. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. What do you attribute that to, and how much do you think that contributes to your success? And did it start like that?
That's a great question. It didn't always start like that. I wanted to create something with my company that encompassed, Dan, consulting and education. That's why I call it consulting and consulting systems. But we are, as movement experts, you and I are, Dan, and every physical therapist listening to us today, which thank you for listening, are and can be consultants. But how do we consult? And consulting is such a broad term, right? Yeah. Consulting, it's almost like saying, I'm going to have a cup of coffee. Well, there's so many different types of coffee. There's latte, there's espresso, there's chai, there's that. So there's that. But I think the big picture is I wanted to have almost like Home Depot, excuse the French for Home Depot, but a place where you could go for one-stop shopping where not every, but a physical therapist, a personal trainer, massage therapist, athletic trainer, those in the health field could go, you know what? Oh, okay. I need to work on this part of my education. I want to go to this company and gain some CEUs and learn. I wanted to get more training in this, and I want to learn this from this gentleman here. So it's kind of like taking that, but looking at the MedBridges and looking at the big box and these larger companies, and what can I do to be a little bit different? And that's why I created little pathways for, if you're a massage therapist here, if you're a physical therapist, come here. And there's little parts on my website that guide you to almost like instruct you like following a path to find it. And no, it definitely wasn't always like that. It was definitely a slow, it's been a slow transformation.
Well, you're very organized, and the presentation is organized. Did you have a vision of what it was going to be when you started, or did it kind of develop as you went along and you put the pieces in line?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it developed as it came along.
Yeah, okay. Did you ever imagine it was going to be 17 courses and 5 different tracks?
No.
Yeah, right.
No. And I never imagined in my life. Matter of fact, Dan, one of my honest to God truths with you and your audience is I hate writing, and I'm not a prolific writer. Matter of fact, I struggled to get so through my thesis and first master's that I had to ask my parents for help. It was like, please help me, I don't know if our listeners out there had problems with their thesis or writing, but I've become, and I've cultivated my writing. I think the writing's improved, but I'm nowhere near some of the writers out there in the US today, or even your audience, even people like my mother, who's an amazing writer, graduate magna cum laude. So I think the big picture is that it's a time process. It's slowly taking a big process for upgrading and turning, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you couldn't have envisioned that this is what it was going to turn out to be, and what it might be in the next 5 or 10 years. Right. Do you have thoughts about that? Where you're going to go with it?
Yeah, I do. I think I didn't expect, and I'll be honest with you and your listeners, and probably someone, and you've been through probably yourself. I didn't expect to go through burnout twice. I didn't expect to take a walk and dip my toe into the non-traditional world of physical therapy, which, my wife says, Chris, you're so much happier. Number one. Number two, my passion, if your audience can't tell, and you can't tell, is teaching. So I'll be doing a bunch of seminars this fall and doing some more virtual stuff, and then into 2022. But I enjoy teaching. Teaching is probably the biggest joy that I have, because when I see someone who's got a frown or got a scowling kind of look, And all of a sudden they get the technique or they get the idea, they get the concept, and they're like smiling. They're like, that's the aha moment, right? As Maitland called it, the aha moment. I really get a lot out of that. That makes my bells twinkle, or my spring of my step.
Great.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is in the next 5 or 10 years, I'm kind of like Madonna or U2 right now. I'm reinventing myself, and it's looking at doing a lot of metacognition, a lot of reflecting on where I've been, where I'm going, and I've got another 50 years ahead of me. So
yeah.
I have a lot more ideas and things I want to do. It's just a matter of keeping them all in check and in line.
That's great. I was thinking you're a lot like Madonna. I was thinking that.
Oh, great.
So do you, and by the way, this past year has been, I think it's been that for a lot of people. A lot of people are reevaluating their situation. I think, when things slow down for 6 months or a year, it gives you a chance to be a little more introspective and reevaluate your own situation and open yourself up to new opportunities. So I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have dates scheduled for in-person training?
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're doing an ISTM seminar, which is instrument assisted soft tissue manipulation. That's with IOM. I'm working with IOM, International Association of Orthopedic Medicine. Excuse me. So we're doing a 6th and 7th of August. We're doing the course in Wisconsin. And in September, we're doing a course on the 17th and 18th in Oklahoma. And then another course on Midland Sports Rehab in Michigan. And then in Tennessee, we're doing a Post Rehab certification end of October. So I'm talking to someone in Dubai. I don't know if have you been to Dubai ever, Dan?
No, probably not yet.
No. Yep, not me neither. I'm looking at going down to Dubai end of the year, possibly do some teaching there in Dubai.
That's great.
And possibly again in 2022. So, I think the physical therapists listening out there, we're all cooped up. We want to learn, but we also want to take some chances and go from there. And I feel like people are trying to get back in the more normal sense of courses. When I say courses, live seminars, something in person, get your hands wet. But, we're dealing with this epidemic and this pandemic, excuse me.
Yep.
And it's been a mindful and a mouthful. So it's
prior to the pandemic starting about a year ago, prior to that, were you, how many weekends or how many days a year were you doing live?
I wasn't doing that many.
Person?
That's a great question. I was only doing probably 6 to 10 a year. So not that many. Yeah, not that many.
Do you see yourself doing more than that going forward? Or, clearly you want to get out of the chute and do it. You want to get out of your house, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think the big picture is I was at a funeral last week in Kentucky, and that's where my raspy voice has got from. But I do like to travel, but I think for me, I'd rather do quality versus quantity. Yeah. But places like, definitely Dubai. I've never been to Dubai.
The opportunity to do that's awesome.
Yeah, I would love to do it, but there's opportunity also. Someone wanted me to come to China, and I said, no. China is pretty right now, I think, one of the probably scariest places to go, meaning there's so many cases of COVID that someone wants to come and fly me over there. But I told them, I think it's still too risky. So, I think as listeners out there and yourself, Dan, as the host, we have to pick and choose our battles very carefully. And most importantly, be careful what we do so that we don't get further sick and obviously keep healthy. So
you do you do live webinars?
I do live webinars. Yeah. Okay. It's 33.5 last year.
Excellent. Yep. So you're doing in person, you're doing live webinars, and the bulk of your business, my understanding, is through the learning management system.
Exactly.
Right? Which explain it to the audience, please.
Ure. So great point. I didn't even know what a learning management system was, Dan, till about 2 years ago. And an LMS system is a system that has your courses, it has your quizzes, it has your content, it has your videos, it has your exams, it has the whole enchilada there. And I'm using a new platform called Teachific. And Teachific is another platform out there. There's Thinkific, there's Digital Chalk, there's a bunch of them out there.
So everyone has used an LMS as a student, whether it was an HR training program, sensitivity type training. I did a driver's ed or your defensive driving course by LMS, and you're doing PT courses now, right? PT, personal training, physical therapy, you name it, on through an LMS system.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then how long are your courses? How long is a typical course?
The typical course is roughly around 3 to 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty doable. Each course is probably around $50, so it's very affordable as well.
Yeah.
My ISTM course, which is the instrument-assisted soft tissue manipulation, $75. That's actually for physical therapists. Our PT side hustle, which is coming out probably the next month or so, is going to be between $75 to $99, which is all business. It talks about non-clinical. It's actually interviewing, foundation of business, income, cash flow quadrant, how to earn residual income. I think a lot of things that physical therapists don't know how to do and learn in school, that take a look at PT side hustle. It's going to be a nice thing to add in there as well.
Yeah. So who's a good candidate? Who do you see taking that PT side hustle course? Like a new grad, someone who's been in for 10 years, someone who's I think thinking about being a PT.
No, it's three different people. 3 different audiences. Your new grad, it's your 5 to 10 year experienced physio, and then your experienced physio, maybe 10 plus, who is looking to reinvent themselves. So it has a mixture of everything, because every therapist can learn how to write a resume. Every therapist can learn to write and how to do interviewing, but do you know what marketing is? Do you know what marketing research is? Those are things that I cover in this course. What is linear income? What is residual income? The cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. How to earn residual income, the types of income that are out there, these opportunities, the non-clinical opportunities, mind-body connection are all the things we talk about. And I think it's a nice package of information that doesn't break the wallet, and big pictures. You can use it the next day.
Yeah.
So
not to give away the special sauce, but what are like the top 5 side hustles that you're seeing PTs get into?
That's a good point. I think the PT, you said the top 5 PT.
Yeah.
I would say probably number 1 that's been out there for a long time has been, doing seminars, doing live seminars, virtual seminars. Second is probably webinars. Third is probably going to be like what I'm doing, which is going to be the home study courses, there's a difference between home study and online. Home study is a course that's got video and a written content. And then there's online, which is just video only, no content.
Yep.
And then I think another PT side hustle is writing books. I've seen a lot of people writing books out there, ebooks, regular books. There's some really good writers out there. I'm drawing a blank. I apologize. I can't come to my head right now, but there's someone I can think of that there is. And then my other is some of these non-clinical opportunities, like clinical reviewer, or being a content writer, or acting as an expert witness, or acting as a consultant. Yep. I think those are the top 5 that I would say.
Yeah, I think some PTs are comfortable with public speaking and writing, and they may be extroverted, and they're very comfortable with a lot of things you just described. But I know that there are also plenty of PTs who would never imagine or could never get themselves to do something like that, meaning teach webinars or do live presentations. So there are options for them too.
Yeah, and my point to that is, that's a great point. My comment to that is I was that last year. I was a neophyte. I never done a webinar before. I was scared and nervous, and oh my gosh, just like with you right now, you're on your podcast. I'm not nervous, but this is the first podcast I've ever done. So this is a whole new world for me.
You're doing great.
Webinars are such an easy way. You Zoom, you've got an hour worth of material, you've got a great PowerPoint presentation, you put it all together, you've got that secret sauce, and you come with passion, and it's ready to go.
What sort of audiences do you think PT should be speaking to?
I think PT should be speaking to people looking for help with movement dysfunctions, people looking for solutions to their problems. I think they should also be speaking to personal trainers and educating personal trainers. I think it's another market.
Sure.
In massage therapists. So I think there's multiple that they can be talking to.
Yeah. Do you and any other thoughts on burnout, like how to avoid burnout?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In my advice to the listeners, and I wish I told myself this if I was listening to this podcast right now, is that listen to yourself. And if you're experiencing this extreme exhaustion, fatigue, and it's not because of COVID, it's not because you have the flu or strep, but you're feeling down. You're feeling not only down mentally down, but you're feeling just drained. Taking a vacation is not just only important, but maybe doing some retrospective thinking about, why are you a therapist? Taking and doing some yoga, doing some meditation. I would say, you know what, Dan, I've never really meditated. I've done more of that lately. And meditation's huge, I think, can help the end user. And then the other part of it is don't just sit on it, act on it. Don't just say, I'm going to take a vacation or I'm going to do that getaway. Do it like Nike. I believe in that mantra, just do it. And then thirdly is be consistent. I worked for a company when I was brand new out of school, and I'm not going to say the name because it's not relevant. I worked for a full year without a vacation, a full year,
Wow.
which is bloody long. And, seeing a good 17, 18 patients a day as a new grad, that's quite a bit. Yep. And it burned me out. So I think, there's a lot to burnout. And my colleagues have written papers on burnout. It's true. It's something that's real and it's effective, as you've already indicated.
Yeah. So my world of telehealth PT, remote care, is I often tout the benefits of making your own schedule and being able to potentially avoid burnout because you're not grinding 8 hours straight for 5 days a week. But on the flip side, there's the tendency to always be working. With work at home, that's part of what has happened for a lot of people, and particularly in other professions. PTs are going into offices and they're still doing the old grind. But telehealth PTs or remote care healthcare practitioners are also experiencing burnout in their own way. So, I think what you're suggesting for them is probably just you got to unplug once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually doing a little bit right now, Dan, some telehealth PT. And it's not easy, but I'm also doing some non-traditional telehealth PT. And I think that, how many of us learn in school to get ready for telehealth PT? I mean, raise your hand.
Not yet. I mean,
it's coming. It's coming.
That's right.
It's coming. And I think you, others out there have been doing it longer than me, will be at the forefront. And you already are. But the point is, I think there is a huge opportunity for telehealth PT. It's huge. Very big.
Yeah. You said non-traditional. What are you doing?
I was saying that I just thought that, when I was in school, I don't remember getting talked about and learning anything about non-traditional roles. And I think that's something that I wish I was at exposure to. So that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah. So you're utilizing technology. I look at it this way to scale your education programs and to get to also scale your time, right? How else do you see, like, what other uses of technology do you see in the physical therapy and rehab space, like advantageous uses of technology?
I see a lot of different devices out there, like Spark Motion, and I'm trying to think of another brand out there that looks at movement, and you can take movement with a tablet and you can use it with your client, and you can analyze angles, looking at hip angle, knee angle, and measure objectively and qualitatively to show the end user, which is the consumer, the customer, the patient, but also the insurance company. Listen, this person has decreased hip flexion. There's a reason why they have decreased hip flexion and they can't do X, Y, and Z functionally. This is why they need therapy, or why they need more based on this movement analysis. Yeah. Or if they can't hold and do a sustained motion in a certain plane for X amount of time. I think technology is going to be, at the forefront in our field. And I think as movement experts, especially doctorate level, I see nothing more than it growing huge exponentially.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to send a video or pictures to an insurance company? We don't do that. I mean, when you get into a car accident, you send them pictures, right?
No, and exactly. I've had, I don't know about you, but I've had fights. I remember a gentleman named Jim Sargent, no pun intended. His name was Jim Sargent. And it was named with the case manager, and he fought me on this one gentleman. It was a patient that was Spanish speaking, and I speak Spanish fairly decent. I'm not fluent, but I spoke okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a fractured wrist. I think he had a Colles fracture. And long story short, he had some RSD symptoms, which we now know is CRPS1, so complex regional pain syndrome. And, you couldn't touch it. It was very painful. And I just came back from Australia and literally learned more from Mosley and Butler on how to treat that. But the point was, I got in an not argument, but we'll call it a heated discussion with Jim Sargent. And Jim Sargent wanted to know why this guy wasn't progressing. And I said, are you familiar with CRPS1? And he's like, what's CRPS1? And I'm like, well, there's a problem right there. If you don't know what CRPS1 is. So we got to the audience, we got into a good discussion, not rudely. And he got the point that, listen, this gentleman needed more time. I needed to do a lot of desensitization techniques, teach a visualization training, work on coping mechanisms, and on some other techniques that obviously, again, I had to speak in Spanish, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, he authorized more and then he's retiring. So to my audience, or to our audience, excuse me, not my audience, you've got to be persistent. You've got to be your own advocate. You can't just say, okay, well, stop. Okay, I'll stop at 10 visits for a fracture. Come on. That's a joke.
Right. And technology, what challenges do you think we're going to face, or are we facing now already with the increase of technology in healthcare in general?
I think we're facing this incredible robustness of it. There's so much coming out that there's so many so many telehealth companies having their own platforms that almost like they're trying to invent their own wheel. That if we had one platform, it would be easier to learn than, say, 5 or 6. When I was documenting with not WebPT, but another system, I remember before I left last year, I mean, it was initially very difficult to learn. And then it became almost automatic, like learning something new, like playing the violin. Eventually you practice and practice, you get it. But the point is, I think that with this robustness, we need to have some kind of curtailing of that technology.
Yeah. I'm a believer that healthcare kind of adopts technology slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that there's not a lot of options out there. I mean, that's kind of what you're suggesting. And PT actually, I think, is slower than the rest of healthcare because we're a mechanical type profession, right? So, I think there are lots of really cool tools out there. And you're right, though. It is kind of hard to weed through the masses of options that are out there. And, vendors come to your office and they try to pitch you on this or that, or, measurement devices. And it's hard to really determine what's going to be the most effective way to enhance your practice and allow you to provide better care to your patients.
And what might be effective to me might be different and effective to you, Dan, right? So
exactly.
It's very subjective. Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
I think it's hard to standardize. It's always going to be hard to standardize, particularly in PT, because it is a very subjective profession. I mean, we don't, we do tests, but we don't take blood tests with scores. And, there's definitely efforts to standardize the measurements we take and the processes we take. But I don't know that that's ever going to happen effectively. One of the movements now that's happening in the rehab space, particularly musculoskeletal care, is more automated care, which is about protocols, but there is the incorporation of AI, which is, that's fascinating to me, where computers are actually analyzing things probably better than most humans can and offering suggestions as to where care should be. How do you feel about that?
I think that's awesome. I think that with the emergence of, when I went back to school, there was only the master level programs, and obviously, there's DPT. I probably will upset a couple of your, I'm probably going to upset a couple of your listeners right now, but I think actually, I see in the future, in the next 5 or 10 years, actually kind of like a super PT. There'll be a DPT and a fellowship combo, kind of combination like that, But do we need more education? And the answer is no. I don't think we need more education. I think that we need more education probably in technology to, like you just said.
Yeah.
But I think from what I'm looking at the DPT programs compared to my master's that I have, I mean, they're amazing. And I think that the future therapist, the 22nd century therapist, is going to have a plethora of tools at their hands and the fingertips, without a doubt. Yeah. So I'm encouraging with AI. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I have to wonder, and I've spoken to several people. One of our guests coming up in 2 weeks is Anand Choksi, and he is definitely in that space where it's a lot of care can be automated, and PTs become basically care managers. Mm-hmm. So they're really looking for that, like 20% of patients that need the additional hands-on, real extra attention, and a good percentage of patients can really benefit efficiently with automated. I hate to say the word protocol because it's not a protocol. It's an adaptive plan of care that is. It's worked through basically by algorithms. I mean, that's what we do in our heads. There's art and science in PT. PT, being a PT is, you're an artist and a scientist at the same time, right? I mean, you really have to have a feel for things. You have to have knowledge base science behind it. And the premise is that those systems, those new coming systems, are going to do that as well as a person for a good percentage of patients. There'll always be patients who really need more one-on-one attention. I mean, a CPRS patient is definitely not going to do well with an automated program. But maybe your status post total knee replacement probably will do just as well without having hands-on care 3 days a week.
Yeah, and the thing is, then it probably would save money. And the problem with that, as you know, and this is almost like politics, is then, are you then delivering that personalized care that leads to functional outcomes ideally? And the problem is, we don't know.
We don't know.
And as someone like yourself who's been around a while, and I've treated probably, 1,000 total knees and at least 1,000 ACLs easily. And I've seen both surgeries. I would want hands-on, and give me hands-on versus a protocol any day of the week, right? Sure. Definitely. I mean, that adaptive tissue shortening, the swelling that needs either myofascial release or soft tissue massage, maybe some ISTM. My view on that is only because I've been through abroad into another country where modalities, and another thing I think I see in our field is modalities are going to continually being X'd out or phased out even more, just because of the value of what they deliver in the big picture of physiological effect. Doesn't mean they're not effective, but long-term, not as much. So it'll be interesting to see in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Insurance on the Pike is doing that too.
For sure. I'm still in the camp of a hybrid program, which, and hybrid being still one-on-one. I mean, I love the value of telehealth, remote telehealth, and one-on-one interaction and connection with the patient. Ideally for most patients, I think they require an occasional set of hands on them, in-person care. So I think that hybrid model of telehealth and in office is ideal for most patients, most practices. But it's an evolution. I mean, things are definitely going to change. The human experience is changing right before our eyes, and I feel like we're in the middle of it as PTs, because our experience is changing. Healthcare
exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't. Except I think my only question was, I didn't know this, but how long have you been doing telehealth PT for?
About 2.5 years. I dabbled in it with my old employer early on. When I first started researching, I did a couple of visits, and then I dug in and really started to understand the technology, the policy. I mean, I spent so much time just understanding policy and legalities and all of the other stuff that most PTs don't really even think about, to be able to put together a program for my old employer And we were doing a bunch of visits back in 2019, and then I left. I left in the middle of 2020 and started consulting, training and consulting. And it's been a trip. It's been amazing. I mean, it's really cool. And the reality is that what happened in the past year. It blew up. It's everywhere now. So, and I don't think the genie's going back in the bottle. I think there's going to be a place for it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be utilized more and more in PT and other areas of healthcare. It's sort of really obvious. PT is a challenging one for a lot of people to wrap their head around, but it's so useful.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think also the AI or the video analysis / assessment way of looking at movement is going to be there to come, and then some in the future.
Great application. I like it.
Great application.
Like it. And there's a lot of companies who are doing things like that. Movement analysis, automating assessment, really. And ideally, I think every PT would love this if they could treat a patient and their visit could be recorded and documented without them having to touch pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard.
Yep.
That's sort of a holy grail, at least in my mind, of, we were speaking about burnout. That is a path to burnout. Documentation is a killer for a lot of people.
It is.
So,
it is.
If you get past that, you might change the game for a lot of professionals.
Yeah, I think you're right. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So this has been a great conversation. I mean,
thank you. I appreciate
awesome. My pleasure, man. I love what you're doing, and it's great that you're doing it, and now you're trying to spread the word and get other people to do some similar things. I think that's awesome. You're helping the profession and the people around you.
Well, I think the opportunity is there, and your platform is awesome. And I think for those listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me and our conversation. But it's been awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity.
So where can people find Pinnacle training and consulting?
You can find it. Yep. www.pinnacle-tcs, that's TomCharlieSam.com, or ptcsconsulting.com. Those are my two different websites you can find me at.
Great.
Pinnacle-tcs.com. Yep.
Awesome. And you're also on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yep.
You can find
everywhere.
Chris Gellert. You can find him in a lot of places. And I love the music on your website. It's almost worth going to the website just for the background.
That was my wife's little tay-to-tay, so I don't know. Sometimes I almost want to take it off,
awesome.
But I'm glad you liked it.
No, it's cool, man. It's cool. I found my head bopping a little bit. Awesome. All right, man. Let's catch up again soon. Great talking to you, Chris.
Thank you. Dan, thanks for your time. You have a great evening.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Chris Gellert. I know I did. I think that was a great episode. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it, and leave your comments so that other folks know to listen to the TelePT Connections podcast. Remember, next week we will have the great Mark Milligan. I hope you can join us. See you then.
We hope you learned some things to help you connect with your musculoskeletal system and more. Find us on Twitter at dseidler, that's DSEIDLER, and at Adrian MPT, ADRIAN MPT, and on LinkedIn, Daniel Seidler and Adrian Miranda. We'll connect with you again next time.